Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission meeting, recorded April 3, 2019.
I call this meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Street Safety Commission to order. Let's see, everyone is okay. I'll call the roll. Trevor Rourke, excused. Bill Fehrenbach.
Here.
Mike O'Mara here. Mary McComb.
Yep.
Janice Borski.
She is excused.
Okay. And Nicholas Corbin is
Here.
here, and he is going to be serving as our alternate. First item on the agenda is people who wish to address the committee for up to 3 minutes on a non-agenda item. Anybody wish? Sure. Yes, identify yourself and give your address, please.
Okay. My name is Jeff Binch. I live on 2341 Water Street. I am an avid biker. I would like to share I had an accident about 3 years ago on the north side by Quick Trip. I was hit by a car that apparently was not yielding the right-of-way to pedestrians and a biker. And I noticed in Stevens Point there are a lot of bikers when we bike. I noticed there are cars that do not watch on a continually basis, daily. I go on a daily basis. Even when the yellow caution lights are flashing at the YMCA, I see continual cars that do not stop, not only for bicycles, but that do not stop for pedestrians. And I've seen college kids that try to cross the road when the yellow caution light is flashing, and they do not stop. And I was talking the other day with a fellow, what they need to do with that caution light, they need to design that caution light like they have by the old Nina Mill, where it's a bigger size sign with a light that flashes around the sign. And I think can't remember for sure, but I think it looks like a stop sign, and then it's got a yellow light that flashes around the sign. And I think that's what they need to do, because when you have a bar on this caution light sign, the bar is this long, and it's only this wide with a little yellow light in there, and there's two lights. But drivers, I don't think in a car can see that light maybe as good. So if you put up a bigger sign with a bigger light in there, I think people are going to be more apt to see it. Because yeah, that's a daily thing there, where college kids cross, bikers cross, pedestrians, and not only that, that's a good design. I think the city of Stevens Point should install more of those signs all out throughout the city, because there are a lot of other places that definitely need that. But as a biker and through my accident, I am still here today, only by God's grace. And I'm glad to see that they do have a bike safety meeting, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else wish to address the committee on a non-agenda item? Any members of the commission wish to address? The minutes of the March 6, 2019 meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve, amend, or...
I will move to approve.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is complete streets. Kyle, you want to take it away?
Sure. So we're not necessarily looking for major discussion or any action today regarding complete streets. But in the packet, I've summarized the recent history regarding the resolution that was recommended by this body to Common Council regarding a complete streets policy and or procedures for complete streets. But I think there's value before we take the next step in informing and educating this body of the different types of complete streets policies that exist, the different mechanisms you can utilize when you are trying to enforce and or adopt complete streets initiatives. So there are several resources that have been identified in the agenda packet that we would encourage you to review in the next month. to better understand it. If you've already done so and you feel like you have a great understanding of it, that's awesome. But I think we would want to have a further conversation on what the next step would be for the city to move towards a complete streets policy or procedure when it comes to new road reconstruction projects, subdivision development, any reconstruction project, major reconstruction project on a city street, to incorporate these as that resolution kind of sets the tone for us moving forward. The other thing I want to note is La Crosse County and communities within La Crosse County have really set the standard in Wisconsin regarding complete streets policies. I don't directly have a link in the agenda packet, but I do reference it. If you want a good example and see what some of those communities have done, whether it's on Alaska or the city of La Crosse or La Crosse County, they've got really good examples, and that may be a template that we want to go with. But what I foresee in the future is once we've been able to inform ourselves a little bit better, both this body and city staff, that we kind of have a discussion on what are some key elements that we want to include, what different approach we want to take. For example, we could have a standalone policy or procedure. It could be part of an ordinance. It could be part of the zoning code. It could be part of the streets chapter. There are a number of different ways we can do it. And staff hasn't really honed in on what approach we would recommend at this point. But I think it's beneficial to provide you guys the resources, because we would probably look for a recommendation from you in moving forward. But we as staff will also be meeting in April with the Streets Department, Engineering Department, and Community Development Department to brainstorm how we want to approach this moving forward. And I don't see that we would necessarily have something within the next month or two, but at least we would be able to outline where we want to go with regards to complete streets and potentially have something drafted or adopted before the end of the year.
Thank you. The next is the Portage County Bicycle and Pedestrian Goals and Objectives Prioritization. Objectives, not objections.
I also just want to add before we move on, if anybody has comments regarding the complete streets or wants to meet with city staff, feel free to contact me directly or the Director of Public Works. With regards to the next item, I was not at the last meeting, but I did put together a very thorough spreadsheet documenting all of the goals and objectives outlined within the Portage County Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Those are within, a 10-page document in a spreadsheet format, Excel spreadsheet format, which can basically serve as our one source to carry out these goals and objectives. I found difficulty trying to flip through the 250-page document that outlines several municipalities, goals and objectives for the county. So what I did is obviously go through and grab those that just pertain to the city. There are some that overlap with regards to enforcement, education, evaluation. The infrastructure and engineering goals were very specific to the city and different streets within the city, but the other ones were may also carry over to the county and other municipalities. Nonetheless, I think there's value to include them. Thus, I've also added a few columns for, a lead agency or department, a partner, a timeline, and a status. And my hope was that this would help the commission focus on whether it's an annual basis or once something gets approved or achieved, that they focus on another goal and continue down this effort. But because, this can be subjective in nature, the commission can just determine, every year what they want to focus on, or we can have some sort of protocol or procedure to do so. But once they've done that, or once you guys have done that, I also think there's value in documenting the steps that have taken or need to be taken to achieve a goal. So I've included this month a few additional documents, one of which I have utilized an existing goal out of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. You'll find that on page 24 of your packet. Basically, this outlines the goal, outlines the objectives that need to occur to reach that goal, and documents, what specifically has to happen, what's measurable in terms of success, and what metrics can be used to determine success. How is this going to be achievable? What tools or skills need to, be utilized? How is this relevant? And then what is, again, the timeline that this goal or objective can occur? So I've outlined that on page 24. I think for every goal, we should proceed with a documentation along the lines of what I've provided here, and I'd be looking at your feedback to see if there's something I'm missing. Again, this was a template that I found online. After we've done that, I think we still would also want to pursue outlining, the timeline. So on page 25 is another sheet where we can take it a step further and outline maybe what resources are needed to obtain a goal or objective. And then on page 26 is another tracking template where we can, again, identify the responsible party, the priority, the start, end, and any notes in relation to the objective. The reason I really place high value in documenting this is because much of these goals are going to require a budget. And I don't want to see this commission recommend something or staff pursue a goal or objective that goes nowhere. We could make a recommendation to Common Council, and that recommendation could be accepted or denied. I think we have a much better opportunity to have a goal come to fruition if we outline and document what resources are needed, what work has been done by city staff, what partners need to partake to achieve the goal or objective, and then provide that as more concrete information when this body makes a recommendation to the Public Works Department or the Community Development or Common Council, because then when they're budgeting, maybe in October or November, even before that in July, if we have this concrete data, I think we have a better shot of including infrastructure improvements, for example, into a budget or enforcement or any other goals or objectives if we thoroughly outline what we've done, to come to that conclusion. So again, I would ask for any feedback on this, general discussion or conversation, and we can make tweaks to this, or we can, pursue a totally different protocol and procedures to all of this if you'd like.
Any comments?
This is about as nice a template as I've ever seen for this sort of thing. It's excellent. And I won't be involved anymore after today, but I really want to encourage the commission to do what Kyle says, because I remember very strongly the difficulties council had in getting this commission official. And there are eyes on this commission who I think would like to see it fail. Boy, I'm a lame duck. I can say lots of things, can't I? So anyhow, to be serious, this is great. Good find.
I would like us to maybe have a line about when we propose it for the budgets, because what happens a lot of times in the budget, from year to year, sometimes you propose something 3, 4, or 5 years in a row before it comes in. But it's important for the people who are making the budget up is, these guys think this is an important goal because they have kept on giving it to us year after year after year. And so just, when we make a budget recommendation, that we document each year that we do it, so that there's a history of how long we've been working on this.
Yeah, we can certainly do that by adding just a simple column to.
Well, you could even put it in the time, intermediate and final
Right.
deadline.
And I think that's a good point, because if if this body recommends 5 goals or 5 objectives a year, to tell you the truth, not all of them are probably
If we
going
get
to come to
1.5,
fruition.
we're
Right.
big winners.
But
Especially if one of them is the.
what you're
Minnesota.
doing by documenting all of this is you're just allowing, ease next year to be able to just bring it back up and continue it forward in subsequent years versus having to do all of the due diligence and that. You might have to tweak things a little bit if the, the partners change.
Yes.
Or, you obtain a grant and can use grant funding instead of traditional sources of funding through the city's budget. But that is certainly a good point.
I notice we still have the Minnesota street overpass at $4 million in this plan. So
Yes.
that's not the kind of thing that is just going to happen
Right.
without. Can you clarify how all this relates to the TAP grant and those projects in particular?
So I think if there are things that the Public Works Department does, and I know Scott had highlighted several items that are either occurring now or are planned for the future, which would meet some of these goals. I would say I would leave it up to this body if they want to, cross that goal off, or if it's just an ongoing, reoccurring goal. I would think a lot of the educational goals within this plan are likely going to remain and just continue to be ongoing. Nonetheless, if we document what's occurred, we then have a track record to prove, what staff has done to further bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. We have a track record to show what this body's, or this commission's, benefit has been to the community, if we have that track record. But in regards to the TAP grant and any other projects that the Public Works Department are doing, I think, I'd leave it up to this body if they deem necessary to cross anything off. I think some of the TAP grant routes are probably going to cross off some infrastructure improvements.
Correct.
In this document.
So we not need to deal with those because those are
Correct.
a
And I
given?
think what we would do after the TAP grant comes to fruition is we would just start crossing off those infrastructure improvements to try to, dwindle down. And the ultimate goal of this body is to implement this plan. And after this plan's implemented, I would foresee this body's goal and objective to further initiatives and create a new plan that outlines another 10 years into the future. So I would think staff would probably keep that list. Once we've achieved a goal or objective, they would confirm with this body whether or not we kind of want to cross that goal or objective off.
Or
You
mark it
guys-
as completed.
Mark it as complete, correct? Cross it off.
Because, we're talking about proving to people that we're relevant. Well, one of the
Correct.
things is to show it, maybe we have a separate section that says completed goals, but I don't want to discard them.
Right. I would foresee that primary spreadsheet that I provided
Yes.
last month to be the
Yeah.
kind of the working document for all of these moving forward. And we can just add columns if there's a notes column we want to add or a completed column as a way that we can reference it moving forward on what's been completed, what hasn't, what's ongoing, what's, pending. And then it's an easy way for us to reference back to it as we move forward.
Thank you.
Any other comments relating to maybe thoughts you'd have on either of these documents or templates?
No, I think you're going in the right direction.
Okay.
Just make sure that they're easy for you to use.
I think they certainly would be. I think it's
Yes.
going to be cumbersome at some point when we have several of these.
Yeah.
But I think, it will be beneficial moving forward to, again, document all this. I think it'll also help if, the Common Council says, we want to see what the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee has done in its first year. We can reference these documents moving forward, whether it's the creation of an annual report for bicycle and pedestrian activities within the city, or, grant applications where we need to prove what recent work has been done related to bicycle and pedestrian activities. This is a way we can easily reference those. So hopefully, the upfront time that's put into these will pay off on some
Yes.
of those back-end projects.
The one other thing we had in there, we were talking about, and that's the reason you have, I think it's page 27, the one where I'm talking about prioritization filling sidewalk, that was a discussion we had at the last meeting. And we don't have to adopt it this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, I'm sorry. I wasn't up all night. But at any rate, we don't have to adopt it right now. I talked to Scott, and he thought it was pretty reasonable. And then there was another one about a possible policy for what we do in the case of a pedestrian or bicycle fatality. And at some point, we might want to put that on a agenda item for recommendation to council, because it's good to have those. Because when it happens, a policy helps people know what steps to take.
You know, the only other thing I'd comment on is, so this isn't necessarily going to assist this body in prioritizing what they want to focus on. I think that's just going to have to be done subjectively by this body. There is no template that to help you identify what you need to focus on, because it's based on, you know, what we have resources for, maybe what's most needed to be focused on. But I would certainly look to you guys, because of your backgrounds and your interests, to help city staff identify what maybe should be focused on next with regards to all of these goals and objectives. So, you know, I can certainly work with Trevor as the chair to see what he thinks is the best way to do that, whether it's on an annual basis or, you know, you kind of have a prioritization agenda item, you know, as a placeholder on every agenda. And if you feel the need to talk about a goal or an objective, you have the opportunity at every meeting to do so. Again, whether that's recommending staff to focus on a new one, or you know, talking about maybe the completion of another one, or any updates regarding, again, any of these
Or
goals.
something happens that brings shows us the importance of the goal that maybe we hadn't seen before. For instance, we have a pedestrian traffic jam after Riverfront Rendezvous that's really problematic. We say, gee, we had a pinch point there we didn't realize. Well, that's when you'd bring it up and say that's something for us to put on, but I think we'll probably have one meeting or workshop where we do the prioritization for the year, because you want to do it, probably want to do it in June or July, so you can get it into the budget. And the next item on the agenda is staff updates.
So, I don't necessarily have a whole lot to update you about, but I know Scott did have a few things he wanted to comment on. Scott, the Director of Public Works, is unable to be with us today. He's accidentally double booked himself this morning. First, I'll just provide you with a simple update from me, which is regarding the city's comprehensive plan. We received a final draft of the comprehensive plan about a month ago. We asked for updated data and facts because a lot of it was from 2014, 2015, and I think with recent data, we'd rather have that updated data. So they've done so. They've updated a lot of the data in the comprehensive plan. I think it would make sense for this body to maybe take a look at the transportation chapter again and the goals and objectives related to the transportation chapter. If there's any other relevant chapters or goals and objectives, I think we can certainly provide those as well at the next meeting. The other thing I want to note, though, is that, you know, the goals and objectives, or the goals within the comprehensive plan, do not provide the level of focus that you see in the Portage County Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. The comprehensive plan is, you know, higher up in terms of the goals. The comprehensive plan isn't going to focus in on how to achieve a goal or objective, or you know, what necessarily needs to happen. And it also is looking at several different aspects of development, whether it's housing, transportation, land use, economic development, parks and recreation, natural resources. And that's why it's a pretty thick document, and I don't think we'd want to bring the entire thing to this body, but the transportation chapter may be relevant again for you guys to take a look at. That's all I have then, unless you have specific questions for me and related to community development
Then
activities.
why don't we consider putting a review of the transportation chapter on the next
Okay.
agenda?
Perfect, we will do that. Then I will go into what Scott has. He had a conversation with, I believe it was you, Mary,
It was me.
regarding traffic calming methods on local streets. He believes the biggest takeaway would be to convey that the city is open to a wide variety of traffic calming techniques, but that those traffic calming techniques should be done at the local neighborhood level, at the request and with the support of the neighborhood, considering they are going to be the beneficiaries of any of those changes to those local roads in calming that traffic and improving safety. He has been exploring and will continue to explore other communities' policies on traffic calming, and hopes to bring it forward at the next meeting. Any documented processes that he's come across that work well with that regard.
Kyle, are there specific examples here that we're talking about, or
Yeah,
just a
well,
general?
We are, and I guess I'm somewhat disturbed to hear that, because I brought these requests to him from neighborhoods, and now I'm gone, and I don't know what, it's gonna start all over again with the new person, but one request was for, on West Whitney Way. Scott and I, that's the little street between a row of houses and Mead Park, this is all on the
Okay.
west side. And Scott had some definite ideas about that. That neighborhood has been requesting something for some time.
So for example, there's speed bumps there already, you're talking
No,
about something.
there are no speed bumps.
Around Mead Park?
No,
Nothing?
no, there's no speed bumps.
Okay.
He and I had talked specifically about restriping and striping, ways to stripe, and, he's the expert, I'm not, to calm traffic. And also, that one was sort of complicated. Anyhow, that's already been a request. It's been a request for a long time. And then I've also had requests from people on West River Drive, mostly near the railroad tracks, but all along. And Scott and I discussed the possibility of striping along West River Drive as a possible traffic calming measure. I know I did some reading on wide stripes are supposed to, without, you don't have to put up a sign or anything, they automatically psychologically slow people down. And the other concern is on West Zinda, primarily up by Maple Ridge. Somebody's, again, this has been 2 years ago. So those requests have come in already. And, I'll talk to him before. before I'm
And I would think that, I won't speak directly for him, but now that the city has equipment to be able to do some striping,
Well, that's what, yeah.
because you've raised this to his attention, I would think he's likely going to
Yeah, I mean,
further the initiative and try to
I
get
hope
something
so.
done.
I hope so, because I'm not gonna be around to worry about it, so.
But I would think because it's on his radar, he's going to do something
Yeah.
in response to it. The other thing he wanted to note is the TAP grant. Again, that's the Transportation Alternatives grant from the Wisconsin DOT that was received to install 13 miles of bike lanes on city streets. SEH, who was Short, Elliott, and Hendrickson, who was the consultant chosen for the project, continues to work on preliminary plans. They are estimating that they are currently working at about 60% complete on the plans. All the plans that are created, or many of the plans that are created are available, but they are currently working on the intersection improvements, which proves to be probably the most unique and difficult with regards to many of these bike routes. And once completed, the draft review stage and the second PMI will take place likely in June. which again is later than originally anticipated, but well ahead of the final completion. The final PSNEs are due in November, so if the meeting happens in June, there's several months between there that any tweaks could be made. Additionally, he notes that SEH is working on a change order request to cover the cost of a historical review necessary to complete the requirements of Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So that's it with the TAP grant. If you have additional questions, I'd ask that you pose them to Scott via an email, because I could probably not answer them as he's working directly with SEH. The other two things he notes are a sidewalk continuation. He mentioned that with regards to that project, a pre-construction conference was held on March 28th. If conditions are suitable, construction on those sidewalk continuations will start later in April and should wrap up around Memorial Day. And the last item is the sidewalk repair. Robleski, which I believe is the contractor, will move forward or move from the sidewalk continuation directly to sidewalk repair, which should then start in late May or early June. And that was respectfully submitted by Scott.
Well, thank you. There being no further business, we stand adjourned.
All right.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.